Okay, so picking up right where we left off, before we get into the new lesson about materials, I just want to mention one thing. You may be getting an error when you run your application, and that's because in the last video we added this new variable, current focus. Well, current focus gets set in the script for PlayerCon. Problem is, by default, it doesn't have a variable assigned. So what you can do, you can see I already have one here. You can just take the prefab, put it there. Shouldn't hurt anything because it's going to be overwritten again in the PlayerCon script. Okay, on to materials. In short, what we're going to do is we're going to make a duplicate of these three materials, and the duplicate is going to be translucent. There is probably a better way to do this. I began researching it, but this looks like it'd be much more straightforward and does meet our needs. Now, having said that, it does not scale well. If you have like 50, 60, 70 different textures that you need to be translucent, then no, you would not want to do this method. So what I'm going to do is this will get us to the next place we need to be. But in a few videos, I'm going to look at doing another video that, again, will modify the code to be more efficient, modify the code to scale better. But for now, this gets us to where we need to be. Again, you're working on the proof of concept. You're working on something that is a prototype, and it's not meant to be optimized at that point. So we're just going to make a duplicate of these three. So right-click, create material, wood underscore p underscore mat. So keeping the same naming convention. Oops, supposed to be 30p, sorry. Wood underscore 30p. Why for 30%? Because we're going to have it about a 30% visibility only. The alpha is going to be set all the way down to about 1/3. So wood underscore 30p underscore mat. And what we're going to do is we're now going to take that wood texture, put it on albedo, set the rendering mode to transparent, and then we're going to click on this little box here. It's the color picker. We're not going to change the color, although you could if you wanted to give it an overall hue. What we're going to do is here, the letter A, the alpha channel, we're going to set that to 85, like I said, about 30%. And when you do that, you can see this now is somewhat see-through. It's somewhat translucent. And now it's just rinse and repeat. Right-click, create, material, stone 30p, stone underscore 30p underscore mat. Again, we take our corresponding texture, put it on albedo, click on the color picker, set it to 85, and again, that's arbitrary. You can choose whatever number you want. It's just trying to make a level of transparency so as that the player can see through where they're placing it to what's around it and behind it. And we set this, the rendering mode from opaque to transparent. And there you go. So until you change the rendering mode, if you notice, it didn't actually honor that alpha channel. It's not until you changed it. And then one more time, right-click, create, material, metal, underscore 30p underscore mat. Take the metal texture, put it on albedo, set rendering mode transparent, click on the color picker and set it to 85. So same three steps. Once you create the default material, you just right-click and choose material. You're applying a texture. You're setting a level of transparency, and you set the rendering mode to transparent. So just like that, you now have three transparent materials. But just as you had variables to store this, you need a variable to store the translucent version. So like I said, it really doesn't scale well, but again, we'll get to a better version in a few videos. So we're going to go to our wall conscript, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy these three, paste them in here, and use the similar naming convention, 30p underscore, 30p underscore, 30p underscore. We save that, and watch what happens. We come to our wall object, which the script is attached to, and there are the three new variables. So wood 30p to wood 30p, metal 30p to metal 30p, and stone 30p to stone 30p. So we now have those materials assigned to variables. So now the wall count object is aware of those three new materials. So when we instantiate or spawn the wall object, it by default is using the old wood mat. We just need to override that. So in the start section, which occurs when an object is instantiated, we're just going to put in cube obj, because again, the material is being applied to the child object, not the actual parent. The parent is, as we said, pretty much an empty object with a collider. So cube object get component renderer material, whoops. And the material is going to be that new wood 30p mat. So let's go ahead and run this, because up until that point we really hadn't added any functionality. Now we're actually going to see an impact. So when the object spawns, it should now be translucent. So I'm going to hit B, and sure enough it is. It's using that new translucent material. There's not much in the back, but you can indeed see like the horizon through it. So we've applied the translucent wood mat to the object when it instantiates. Now what we need to do is when the buttons 1, 2, or 3 are pressed, we need to modify those so it uses the new material and not the old material. If it doesn't recognize the variable, you'll see this will be red. Here we go. So yeah, so if you ever like mistype a variable, if it doesn't recognize the variable, it'll be red, and it's warning you of that even before you run it. Okay, so now when we press 1, 2, or 3, we should be assigning the new material that's translucent. So again, we can run this because that's new functionality, or at least modified functionality. So we press B, press 2, press 3. Spectacular. So now we have translucent versions of all materials, or the 3 materials I should say, and they are being applied when we cycle through the materials. They get applied instead of the old opaque materials. So getting close. Really all that's left is when we press the space bar and it places that object, it now needs to revert, or rather it needs to use the old material. So eventually you're probably going to have to come up with a variable that declares what an object is made out of, because right now we're just using a variable to say how much HP it has. We're probably going to eventually have to come up with a wall, I don't want to use the word material, but something that indicates what it's constructed of, because depending on the complexity of your game, you might want certain materials to have certain resistances or weaknesses. So if it's wood, maybe it takes double damage from fire. Maybe if it's metal, it takes half damage by fire attacks, things like that. And we really haven't gotten into that yet, because this has purely been about really the instantiating, rotation, and placing of the object. We're really not looking that much into the actual functionality of combat yet. So we're really looking at the bare bones at this point. So what I'm getting at is we're going to kind of cheat a little. We're going to just use that wall HP to determine what the mat should be, because we've said is when you click on that button, we set the material and wall HP is set to a unique number, because there is no overlap here. So eventually we're going to want to use a status, but for now we'll use the wall HP. So when we hit the space bar based on wall HP, we'll determine which opaque material is used. So if wall HP equals 100, then we want something to happen. Again, we'll change the cube. Just copy that one. But now we want to use the wood mat. Now just rinse and repeat. Do that for wall HP 200. Should be stone mat. And 300 for metal. And I believe this one I accidentally used a capital on. Yeah, see how it's red? It doesn't like that variable name. There we go. Okay, gonna do a once over, make sure I didn't miss anything, but I believe that should do it. So we press B, it spawns it, and let's rotate, let's cycle through. We got 2, we got 3, let's go back to 1, and we're gonna hit space. Sure enough, it became solid. If I hit A, we have our translucent one there. Let's press 2 and then space. Sure enough, it's stone. Let's rotate this one and we'll make it metal, space. Sure enough, it is metal. So mission accomplished for this particular task. We now have a translucent version of each material. That way, when you're placing it, you can see what's behind it and next to it. And that should about do it for this lesson. As I said, I am openly admitting that this is not the best way to do this, but I think it's a very straightforward way to do it. But I am saying that it will not scale well. There is another approach that uses, I believe it's called property material block, something like that. I'll look it up for you. But in a few videos, once we have everything in place, like I said, we'll go back and we'll do a lesson specifically about optimization, a lesson about making it run better. All right, so I think that should do for this particular video. Have any questions, just let me know.